right, I think people will still be joining here for a few moments, but we will kick this off. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Chris and I are here representing Cargus. Linda Pinion, the wonderful Linda Pinion is here from Sage. So let's just get right into it. So without further ado, Chris, Linda are our speakers today. I will let them introduce themselves. Chris, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. My name is Chris Stetler. I've been with Cargus for about 2 years now. I'm a solution strategist for our Sage Intacct practice, our cloud software. Prior to that, I spent about 9 years in public accounting, working with specifically with QuickBooks clients. So I know sort of from the bottom up, you know, what it takes to go from QuickBooks to Sage Intacct, some of the improvements that Sage Intacct and cloud software provides. So I'm here to provide some insight into that and represent Cargus alongside Laurel, and pop it over to Linda.
Thank you so much, Cargus team. Great to be with you again. This is a series of webinars and events that we're doing together, and it's always exciting to work with you. As Laurel mentioned, I am with Sage. I started 13 years ago. I call it Lucky 13, and I started as a solution consultant, and I'm still a solution consultant. So that says something. We've got a lot of tenure in our group. Today, my role is really to reinforce why customers move both to Cargus and to Sage Intacct. And one of the things that I can tell you is, having been here so long, many of our customers have come from QuickBooks. So this is a great migration. This is definitely something that you will not be alone. You will be in great company when you move over to Sage Intacct. So thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Linda, for joining us. And I am the least interesting of today's speakers. I am just emceeing today. My name is Laurel Morse. I am the ERP sales manager here at Cargus. All three of us have careers in solution consulting in Sage Intacct specialization. So I've been here at Cargus for 4 years, and we'll talk a little bit more about ourselves at the end if you're interested in who Cargus is. But let's jump into some housekeeping. The questions that everybody asks. Yes, this session is being recorded. Yes, this session, the recording will be emailed to you, I think it's about an hour after today ends, and today's slides are loaded into the handouts. So on the little sidebar there, if you go into the handouts section, you can download today's slides. If you have any questions, please pop them in and we will get to those at the end. So first thing here, before we kick off the content, we want to level set, we want to understand a little bit about how you're using QuickBooks today. So our first poll question is, how many companies are you managing in QuickBooks today? And all right, let's see. I'm going to give this a second here, give everybody the ability to get their numbers in. Is it only one company that you're managing in QuickBooks today? Are you hopping in and out between 2 to 5 companies, maybe 5 or more, or are you just not sure? So let me close this. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let me close this now and I will share the results. It looks like 60% of you are operating 2 to 5 companies, which is a lot of times what we see when you get to the point, and Linda and Chris will speak to this later, but when you get to the point where you're managing more than one company, so more than 2 companies in QuickBooks, hopping back and forth between those, you know, doing your intercompany transactions and all of that can get a little bit, I mean, you know, I don't have to tell you, it can get a little bit tedious. So that is what we see. And next up, secondly, again, just to level set, what is your number one, if you had to pick one, your number one frustration with QuickBooks today? Is it the security? Is it lack of visibility? Is it logging in and out of companies, as I mentioned, which I know is a big one, consolidating data, obviously a limitation, or is it reporting? What would you say is your number one biggest issue with QuickBooks? Again, I'll give this another couple seconds. I'll give this a 3, 2, 1, and I will close this poll and I will share the results. Looks like consolidation of data, we know it. Logging in and out of companies, reporting, security. I would say lack of visibility goes into that one, though nobody chose it. The ability to see all of your companies if you are managing those. So great, thank you for participating. Really appreciate that. Let's get into the content. So speaking from a customer's point of view, Linda, I will ask you to go first here. What are the signs you see that it's time to switch from QuickBooks?
So I'm going to tell you a story, true story. Several years ago, I was put in charge of the prospect track at the Intacct customer conference. And as part of that track, it's always helpful when prospects can hear from customers who have moved from QuickBooks to Sage Intacct. So I recruited a company, Jupiter Entertainment. The lady's name is Julie Dean, a delightful lady, was a great storyteller. But I'm going to tell Julie's story today as she told it that day. So Julie moved into Jupiter Entertainment from a previous company, and the first thing she walked into was 11 instances of QuickBooks. Now, in all fairness to the story, Julie had worked with Microsoft for many years, and she had a great background with Microsoft. She also knew QuickBooks. But when she walked into this company as the controller and saw these 11 instances, she said the air kind of went out of her because she knew all that that meant, and she knew what a struggle that was going to be, and she kind of took it as a personal mission. I got to do something. I got to replace this. So she started looking for a new solution. She ended up with Sage Intacct, obviously, but here's what she told us along the way. With those 11 instances of QuickBooks, first of all, she couldn't bring them all up at the same time. It took her over 40 hours to consolidate. So just mushing all of that data together and getting it to a point where she could do something with it was a task that was just, a whole week's worth of work. And of course, while she's doing this, everything else that she should be doing or could be doing was piling up. Work went on into the new month while she was still trying to close the previous month. And she said that close was taking her up to 25 days to get done. And even then, she wasn't quite certain that she had it all together because she might have forgotten something and she had to go back. So the net of this story was, okay, so what's it like now that you're on Sage Intacct? And of course, you're going to hear this sprinkled along today, and we're going to show you in product. But it was really about having the ability to consolidate that data. And it's interesting that the poll came back that way. But it was that consolidation of the data. And equally as important was trusting the data. So there's a trust factor that needs to be filtered in here. If I'm pushing everything out to Excel, I can make some mistakes in doing that. So in moving to Sage Intacct, I not only got the data there and got it consolidated and got visibility to it, I gained a trust that the data was accurate. So Julie's story could be your story. Maybe you don't have 11 instances. However, if you have more than 2, you're having to do this fire drill, if you will, to get this data together. So that's from a customer's point of view.
So next, from the controller's point of view, what do we think?
So again, Julie happened to be, this controller CFO person. And so a lot of the things that you see on this list, Julie pointed out as well. I would just tell you that whole month-end close can be just a showstopper. Everything else stops in the accounting world, and everyone else stops. I was part of that closing team, and nothing happens during the week of closing or the 2 weeks of closing. You're just focused on doing closing work, and that requires lots of hours, additional hours. It requires not only pulling that data together, but getting those closing entries together. And as Laurel said, this might mean some intercompany or inter-entity, as we call it, transactions. This might mean taking care of allocations at the end of the month, posting those standard journal entries like depreciation, making sure that you've got everything on the list taken care of. The other piece to that is, obviously, if you're doing a lot of this manually, there's always the room that you're going to make some boo-boos along the way. So is the data right? Is it accurate? Do we have that trust in the data? And when you think about what are you doing outside of QuickBooks, you're looking at Excel as really running your business. You're running QuickBooks, but in all honesty, if you're pushing all of that out to Excel, Excel's running your business. And that's kind of a real issue, because again, we know that Excel has its place. It's never going to go away. However, we need to understand that the data may not be right from the time it lands on that spreadsheet. Speaking of spreadsheets, I have a spreadsheet, Laurel has one, Chris has one, and 5 more people have spreadsheets. Well, who's got the right spreadsheet? Well, I don't know. Do you have the most up-to-date one, or is that me? How do we pull that data together? How do we get visibility across all of those 11 instances? And that's not easy to do with QuickBooks. So visibility is what we're talking about here, knowing how all of our businesses are tracking. And then what does this do to us? Take away the software conversation for a moment. What does this do for us around competing? So think about competing and your competition. If you're not organized, if you're not getting things done on time, if you're not sure that what you're producing is right and accurate, how are you going to compete for business? So just, this might not be something that's at the top of your list, but it definitely should be on your list.
Well, that's something that, Linda, we see all the time at Cargus from an implementer's point of view, is we have lots of customers in the same spaces, right? And a lot of times when somebody chooses to work with Cargus, they want to lean on our best practice expertise, because what are businesses like me doing? I'm looking over the fence. What are they doing over there? Can I learn from anything from them? So not only can the software help you, but just keeping up with what exactly, like you said, what are your competitors doing, and how can I be doing it not just as well as them, but better than them to get a leg up?
And that's where Cargus comes in.
Exactly.
So I'll toot your horn for you.
Allow it.
Obviously, you're protecting that confidential information. So let me just go on record to say that. However, when you are focused, you being Cargus, when you're focused on a particular vertical, on a particular subset of types of companies, you're learning and you've learned what those best practices should be. So why should I, as a controller, have to try to figure that out if I can partner with Cargus and you guys can help guide me where I need to go? Not just with my software, but helping guide me with what my processes should be. I mean, that's what consultative selling and implementing is. It's not just about, oh, I'm going to drop off some software. You're a smart girl. You'll figure it out. This is about really understanding your business. And folks, this is where Cargus plays their card, because this is in their wheelhouse.
Yeah. So Chris, from an accountant's point of view, what have you seen in the real world here, working with all of the QuickBooks customers that you have?
Yep. So recurring theme here: unreliable, detailed data, the inability to feel confident from an accountant's point of view, an auditor's point of view. Know that the data is good, know that it's been reconciled, know that your balances can tie out to your trial balance, to your GL, to your vendor aging subledgers. QuickBooks does not have the ability to sort of have all those checks and balances. So from an auditor's point of view, accountant's point of view, It may be great for them because they're getting more work and more hours, but for you, you're spending more money. You're constantly back and forth with the auditors. You're constantly trying to pull something out. With Sage Intacct, being able to attach PDFs to every transaction, every journal entry, email confirmations, all the approval policies that Sage Intacct has in place for purchasing and for bill payments, et cetera, journal entries even. Right down to a standard journal entry, having those controls in place, those internal controls really helps to ease the, the poking and prodding from the accountant side because they're comfortable with the data and they're comfortable with the way that you're running your business. One thing also from a reporting standpoint is just the, if you ever ran a cash basis trial balance or balance sheet in QuickBooks, you're going to notice that you're probably going to have, if you're utilizing AR or AP in QuickBooks, you're going to see negative balances on there. So the reporting side of things, just if I would get a trial balance as an accountant or an auditor, and I'd see a cash basis report with AR or AP on it, I'm going to be like, what's going on there? So all things that are just, fully built into Sage Intacct come with the core accounting, all the approval policies and the internal controls. Another thing, sales tax returns. If you're filing multiple sales tax returns in multiple states, multiple entities, multiple jurisdictions within multiple states, like here in Pennsylvania, we have Philadelphia, we have Allegheny County, all kinds of stuff, from sales tax, different things. So QuickBooks can't handle all that. QuickBooks can't handle keeping it clean, being able to file right from the QuickBooks software. So Sage Intacct has a connection to Avalara Tax, which is built in and able to track sales tax easily through all of your modules once it's set up and be able to file those sales tax returns easily right from within the user interface. And then again, concerns about segregation of duties or sensitive information, obviously, like we were talking about and it's come up before, segregating roles, people staying, kind of staying in their lane. If it's an AP person, they only can do AP. AR, they can only do AR. So one of the things when getting a full-blown audit or review is making sure that only certain people have access to certain things, and you have to prove that. So being able to run a report, a roles report from Sage Intacct easily to show that, hey, this user was only able to access these individual modules at this time, and having that full audit trail and that full audit report for every single transaction at the click of a button. Again, going back to being able to provide reliable information at the drop of a hat. Relies heavily on internal accounting staff. So, your outside accounting firm is relying on the internal accounting staff to provide them information in order to provide, to complete a timely audit, a timely tax return. Many times it was, September 14th and September 15th, the tax deadline or the audit deadline, and they're handing over a QuickBooks file and it's just a complete mess. And then it's just race to the finish line to try to get all the information, answer the questions, feel comfortable from a CPA firm point of view that, you can file a timely tax return that's, you can sign off on. So being able to access that information prior to that deadline, knowing that Sage Intacct has the policies and procedures in place to, again, feel comfortable with that data and feel comfortable with those controls so that you're not racing to the finish line right at the last minute. And then the last thing, it's time moving from using an outside accountant, part-time outside accountant, which costs, whatever it may cost in your area, $250, $350 an hour for, $150, whatever it is, for somebody to handle your books for you, for somebody to update, for somebody to reconcile. Being able to move that in-house and have somebody in-house to provide that service for you, again, giving the CPA firm or the accountant the confidence that it's all reliable information. So,
and certainly not least, one of the more important things from a user's point of view, we're all in this system. We're the ones doing this stuff, right? So we're all trying to work towards the end result of a company that's easy to manage at the end of the day and gives us what we need. So from a user's point of view, what would we say the signs are that it's time to switch?
So how important is it? I'll just ask an off-the-cuff question for you to think about. How important is it for your users to be happy with the software that they're using?
Mm-hmm.
I would just say most of the time, the people that I've talked to that are using QuickBooks say, this is just a pain in the you-know-what. I have to log in, I have to log out. I am just so tired of this. So I think employee or colleague morale is really important here from the user's point. I believe that when you empower your users and you give them visibility to their data, so they're not digging in the filing cabinet or having to merge data together, I believe that's part of that pain that they want to go away. Everyone that you talk to that's using Excel, I guarantee you they are experts at it, because people who use Excel can make it stand on its ear and do crazy things, and I get that. However, we've already talked about a couple of really important points with Excel. The other is that we all have our own version, our own copy of Excel, if you will, and all of that exporting is time that it takes us to export data and to figure out how to get the right data out. And then when we get it out, we're really not sure that we've even got all that we're supposed to have and that it's the right data.
And that it's the same spreadsheet back to right? Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we've all made those mistakes. We've all sent the wrong spreadsheet. Guilty, right? I think from a user's point of view, sometimes we don't think about this, that we can attract as customers, as businesses, we can attract a higher level of talent because we are organized, because we are using up-to-date modern systems to drive our financial management. Younger people are used to all of this technology, and that's what they want to see. They don't want to see old clunky stuff. They want to be on the bleeding edge, and they want to make sure that they're getting everything that's available. And then the last thing that I want to mention here, which is really one of the core tenets of Sage Intacct, is our model. Our model is best in class. And Chris mentioned this. I'm just going to mention it again. We were designed from the get-go as a cloud-based solution. In fact, the word Intacct is internet accounting. So we didn't come from another flavor. We've always been a cloud-based solution. However, we were architected so that we could easily connect or integrate to other solutions. Like Chris mentioned, Avalara. Avalara does sales tax. That's all they do. They eat, sleep, breathe tax. And they're really, really good at it. We're really, really good at financial management. In fact, we're so good, we're the only AICPA endorsed product. So the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants says we're the best and we're the path forward. So we're not going to be your sales tax guru. We're going to leave that to somebody like Avalara. What we've done in our product is we have created it so that we can connect to products like Avalara, move that data into our strong financial engine. So integration to other best-in-class applications is one of our core tenets. All right, so here's the fun part. We're going to do a little bit of compare and contrast, and we're going to do this in product. This is the roadmap that I'm going to follow. I've got 3 bullets here that I'm going to try to cover in the next 15-20 minutes. The first one is visibility. I'm going to start with the end at the beginning. Along with that visibility, you're going to see some of the flexibility where we've talked about companies or instances in QuickBooks. We refer to that as entities. So just remember, when I say entity, just think company. And I want to talk to you about some of the flexibility of how can you land and expand. So today you have 2 companies that you're managing, and next year you're going to look at 3 or 4 companies. So how do you start out and grow? How does the software grow? How flexible is it? Are we in Jello? Are we in concrete? What's the difference? What are we going to do from a reporting standpoint? And we're going to introduce you to something called dimensions. And then over in the automation area, there's lots of ways that we can help with automation. And I will tell you that in some of these areas, like our bank reconciliation, our AP automation, and even in our general ledger journal entries, we're utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning. We won't get a deep dive of that today, but I want you to know that those are things that are happening in the background, and they've been happening for a long time. And that's how we're going to help you streamline and automate your processes, is we're going to use technology to do that. So this is what I'm going to cover. Laurel, if you could pass me controls, I'm going to turn my camera off. And let me show my screen. And Laurel, if you could just verify that you can see Sage Intacct.
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. So just to level set, we are going to take some questions at the end. So if you want to put those in the chat, if you want to make note of those, we'll have some time at the end to answer questions. If this is your first time to look at Sage Intacct, there's a lot of information on this screen, and we won't cover all of it, but I do want to touch on some certain areas and tie that back to things that Chris and I have shared with you today. So the first thing I would tell you is that I've logged into a presentation environment. So I have some demo data out there, if you will. It's all about alarms and an alarm company, so you'll start to see some of that. I've also logged in as two different people. And the people that I have logged in as, one is Emma. She is my CFO, and another person is Nikki. Nikki's actually an employee type user. We have different types of users, and that controls sometimes, you know, what that user can do based on their role. It also has a different price point as far as your configuration. We'll look at Nikki a little bit later in the software, but right now we're going to start out with Emma. And just know that when Emma logged in, she logged in with a secure connection, and we talked about permissioning. There's lots of permissions running in the background for security purposes. I have opened Emma up as a kind of a super user. I've granted her access through her permissions where she can go anywhere, do anything pretty much. However, you'll see that Nikki cannot. So I'll point out those differences to you. Much more granular of a permissioning system here in Sage Intacct than what you have in QuickBooks. I also would tell you I am managing more than one company in this one instance of Sage Intacct. So I have one instance of the software, and as I open up this drop down, these entities are all companies that I'm managing. So I have four different companies here, 100, 200, 300, and 500, that are companies or entities being managed. Now, that is also permission based. Emma can transact in any of these entities. Whereas if I move over to Nikki, Nikki is my other user, you'll see that her drop down only gives her the choice of entity 100. So that means that users can have permissions controlling what instances they can, pardon me, what companies they can transact in. So let's look at what we have in front of us as far as our dashboard is concerned. We have the ability to utilize dashboards to show you reports and information about how your business is tracking. You'll have the ability to set up unlimited numbers of dashboards, and I just opened up my drop down here so you can see that I may have specific ones based on an area of the business, like accounts payable or accounts receivable. I might also have one that's around the end of month processes, or even my workflow approvals, and we'll see that with Nikki in a few moments. But right now I'm going to focus on my controller dashboard. That's what I'm focused on as the controller. And when I log in and open up Sage Intacct every day, this is where I land. And when I look at these boxes at the top, this is what I call Quick Business Insight. This is what gives me a snapshot of how the business is tracking. Now, here is where Julie Dean from Jupiter got so excited. Julie, remember, had 11 instances. I said, Julie, I just saved you 40 hours. She said, I don't understand. Well, that 40 hours that it took her to consolidate that information and get that consolidated view, I just gave her that view when I opened up this dashboard. Each one of these boxes is a performance card, and it contains numbers or operational data across all of my companies. So this $53,000 here is representative of all of the general and administrative expenses across my 4 companies. Now, as a controller, I might say, well, you know, I don't want to look at the consolidated view. I just want to look at one specific entity. So I'm going to apply a dashboard filter, and I filter this down to entity 100. And now what you see is of that 53,000, 30,000 of it belongs to entity 100. That's how easy and fast I can change my view. So I don't need to create 400 dashboards. All I need to do is to filter the data at the dashboard level. Now, you can filter based on 3 different elements here, and these elements are what we call dimensions. So the ones that I've chosen, I chose location, I chose item because I have inventory running here, and I also chose project. Each one of these is one of the 12 predefined dimensions in Sage Intacct, and I can choose whatever dimensions I want to use to filter by. I can filter independently, or I can use them in tandem. I can also filter by an as of date. So this gives me a lot of flexibility right from the dashboard level. I'm putting myself back to that consolidated view. And what I'm also interested in knowing is, where are these expenses coming from? I've got a visual indicator. I'm comparing it to budget. I can compare it to a different period or time frame if I chose to. And I can also drill into this information. Now, here's where this electronic filing cabinet comes in. I don't have to go dig in the filing cabinet or call someone to get this information. I have it right at my fingertips. So what I'm comparing here is my actual to my budget, and I can see that I've already blown it in office supplies. I'm a little bit curious as to knowing what that means and where it's coming from and why I'm over budget. So now it takes me right into the general ledger report, shows me the detail of all the transactions. This is also another place where you're going to start to see those dimensions come into play. Every transaction is dimensionalized. So it's tagged to a specific location or entity, 100 in this case, to a department, to a vendor. These are all dimensions, part of those 12 that I mentioned. The item, perhaps the warehouse. So now I have the story of those transactions at the transaction level. I'm a multi-journal system, so I can define as many journals as I choose to, and I can see that that was posted into the AP journal, and I can then drill into any of those transactions as well. So I'm just continuing to go through to that source transaction, which takes me to Neighborhood Printer's invoice. I can see that it was $1,000, it was paid, and I can drill into that. I can also, as Chris mentioned, I can also take a look at the attachment, the picture or the document that was attached to the transaction. Additionally, I can scroll down and I can see how this transaction was coded. Now, important to note is we can have some defaults come in here. So if neighborhood always goes to office supplies, we can populate that for you. And then you'll notice I've tagged it to some dimensional information here. So this gives me everything that I need from a transaction perspective, but that's not all I have. I also have, for the accounting folks, I have the ability to look at where this was posted. And this takes me right to the specific journal. In fact, anything that you see in blue today allows me to drill down to the next level. So I could drill right into the journal here and see the journal entry that this transaction created. So this gives me a lot of information right at my fingertips. And remember, I got to this from the dashboard. Now, let's take another look at something on a dashboard, and that is a profit and loss by entity report. So this is a report that, as a controller, I probably look at this report pretty often. So I want it on my dashboard. I want it handy. The first thing that comes up for me is the ability to filter on dimensions. So everything from department down to warehouse is a dimension. And just know that these dimensions can be purpose driven. They can also be changed. The literal can be changed. They can have rules to make sure that you are populating and tagging transactions to dimensions. I'm not going to filter. I'm just going to go ahead and say, give me everything. And let me open this up a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. This is a profit and loss by entity or by company. So I have defined and designed this report so that I have columns for each entity and then a total column at the end. I also have defined my chart, and I have defined how transactions get posted. So I'm posting transactions for revenue into product lines or product categories. Again, as you watch me drill into this, now you see the revenue side of the house. So now we're looking at customer invoices as opposed to AP bills. And when I drill into that customer invoice, I want you to think for a moment about a customer service rep and what does this mean for them. And this customer service rep now has all this information at their fingertips. So when they're talking to you about your order or about what's going on with a particular invoice, they can get right to that detail and they can say, oh yes, I have your invoice here. You need a copy of it? I can email you directly from this screen. I can tell you what was shipped and where it was shipped from. So I have all that information right here. I also have the ability to look and see what happened in this transaction. So I have a history tab. I know that it started as a sales order and it went to a shipper and then a sales invoice. And once it's paid, I will have the payment details as well. So now I have access to that cash receipt. Now, if I was a customer service rep, this is the kind of system I would want to use because I'd want all that information at my fingertips. So just looking at how, reporting is here at the dashboard level and how you can really drill into this information is very helpful and it's very powerful. One other piece that I want to say about reporting is reporting, lots of different ways for you to do reporting in Sage Intacct. The financial report writer is the one that drove this particular report, the profit and loss. You'll notice it's all in English. We actually define about 30 financial reports for you in a library that you can take advantage of day one. And then you can use those as templates to copy and create your own. So defining the rows and the columns and putting in notations and calculations, and also notice that you have the ability to set up permissions. So permissions can be secured, users can be secured, and reports and dashboards can be secured. All right, so coming back to the dashboard, everything that's on this dashboard is defined by you. So you can create and pull information, whatever's important to you in your role. Again, you can have multiple kinds of dashboards. When you think about the flexibility of dashboards, you need to also think about the flexibility of what I call the foundational things in Sage Intacct. And that's where we start looking at things like, setting up our entities. And one of the things that I know QuickBooks users are really sensitive to is, setting up a new entity and then having to define and figure out all of those inter-entity or inter-company transactions. So here are the entities that I've set up. To add a new one, it's very quick. I just click on add and give it 3 pieces of information and I'm good to go. What I also have the ability to do is to come in and do inter-entity account mapping. So what does this do for you? Well, the net of this is it automates the creation of the do tos and do froms. So when you have, let's just say, a journal entry that crosses over two of your companies, you'll still enter that journal entry. Let's say it's between entity 100 and entity 200, and you'll have a source entity. Once you put that source entity in and post that journal entry, we're going to create those inter-entity or inter-company transactions for you automatically. So you'll be able to see the do tos and do froms. We do that based on this account mapping that you see here on the screen. So you don't have to make those journal entries manually. We'll take care of doing that for you. So inter-entity is something that you can choose to configure or not. You also have in this company area lots of ways to set up your users, whether you want to set them up in a role-based scenario, which is what most people do. And then once you set them up, you'll be able to grant their permissions and access into specific applications. So when I look at Emma here, these are the applications that I've granted her access. And then within those applications, there are tasks and activities and reports that I have granted her permission to execute. One thing I will point out, I said that QuickBooks has, of course, security, but ours is more granular. And I would just say here in accounts payable, you can see that I can enter AP bills, I can post them, I can edit them, I can do everything. I can even reverse them and reclassify them. So those are options that not everyone would have. So we participate in that segregation of duties. So you can actually figure out who's doing what, and as Chris said, run that report so you can see who has access. The consolidation that you saw on the dashboard, again, making sure that your transactions are tied together based on entity and all of those dimensional components is what's going to give you the ability to filter and consolidate different entities together, group those entities together, even group those departments if you want to group departments together and produce reports that way. So it's very flexible. The other thing that I believe is a strong differentiator is how we set up our chart of accounts. And one of the things that you'll notice here in my chart is I don't have segments. So I'm only using the natural or base account. What does this do for you? Well, in essence, it reduces the number of accounts that you have in your chart. It gives you the ability to have a lean and mean chart of accounts. What makes those transactions different is when you key a transaction, you tag it with those dimensions. And again, those dimensions can have rules. In addition to that, it allows you, because you have a multi-entity configuration, that means you're managing multiple companies in one instance of Sage Intacct, you share that chart. So you only build one chart of accounts and you share it. Julie shares that across all 11 of those companies in Sage Intacct. Build it once, maintain it once. Same thing is true with your customer master and your vendor master. 3 objects you'll share: the chart of accounts, the customer master, and the vendor master. Again, saving you a lot of time in maintenance. So one other thing that I wanted to very quickly do, and I know we're getting short on time here, so I'm gonna speed up the process. I'm gonna move over here to Nikki. And remember, Nikki is the person who doesn't have all of the permissions that Emma does. You can see she doesn't have as much on her menus. And then when you get into her menus, it's streamlined as well. What Nikki can do is she can enter a purchase requisition. And for time purposes, I've entered one and saved it in draft mode. So she entered a requisition to replenish some stock from one of her vendors. It's for some security systems, CSS 1002 security system. She's ordered 100 of them, or she's requesting 100 of them, and she's going to go ahead and submit that. And when she submits it, it's going to send it over to workflow. And the workflow is going to be for the approval. And to make it easy, I've set up a workflow approval dashboard. And this allows me to very quickly, as the approver, to see the things that are waiting for me to approve. So here is the purchase requisition from Nikki. If I were Emma, I'd want to look at it. And when I look at it, I'm going to see that requisition. I would see the picture or attachment. I'd see exactly what Nikki wants to be ordered. I can also come in and look at the approval history. Now, this is a very simple one. Emma happens to be Nikki's manager. So we've got that approval, and we've got that approval routed up to Tom, who is Emma's manager. So it's a very simple approval process. We can make that much more involved if we need to. You'll set up your own approval policies. Once I've determined I'm going to approve it or decline it, approving it moves it to the next step in the process. And the next step from approval is to put on my purchasing hat and to take that requisition to the next step. And that next step is to create that purchase order. So from here, I've automated that step so that I don't have to rekey any information. Everything from the requisition flows right through to the purchase order. Once the purchase order is sent out to the vendor and they send that back to me, I'm going to go through a receiving step. I'm going to receive that in, make sure that I got the right items and the right quantities. And then a few days later, my accounting team is going to get the vendor invoice, and I'm going to match that vendor invoice in, making sure that I record the vendor invoice number and then post that. Now, in just a couple of minutes, I've gone through what probably takes a few days to happen, but let's look at what we just did together. We entered a purchase requisition, we got it approved, turned it into a purchase order, did our receiving through the warehouse receiving, and then we got the vendor invoice. All of this is user date and timestamp, so you have a full audit trail and you can drill into any step in the process. So this is the kind of history that you are recording and that you have electronically as opposed to in your filing cabinets. So those were just a few things that I wanted to share with you about Sage Intacct, pointing out a few of the differences between us and QuickBooks. So Laurel, I'll let you come back. And we'll do a quick review.
Thank you much. The screen back up here.
Okay. So just wanted to kind of summarize, really quick. Have you hit the brick wall? Are you spending more time outside of QuickBooks than within QuickBooks? So are you pushing everything out to Excel and, struggling with that story? And the other question that I think is really important is, how are you going to grow your business if you remain on QuickBooks? All right.
These are great questions. And lastly, I wanted to just, go into a little bit about, who we are and, who is Cargus, whether or not you should really be trusting our advice. So we are a team of consultants here at Cargus. We also happen to sell and implement ERP software. So that means that we work with businesses, we help you set up, well, first of all, we help you select the right software, we help you set it up, we teach our customers how to use it, and then as our customers' businesses grow and change over time, we help them adapt and evolve. We've been in the software space since 1988, and today we are one of Sage Intacct's top partners. We sell and we implement Intacct software, not only for our own customers, but also for Sage's customers as well. We do a lot of those implementations. We're one of their top partners there. Shared success, as you can see here, is our purpose. This is why we exist as a company. Our goal has always been to create a place where talented and enthusiastic people love to come to work, love to do a great job for our customers, and then share in the success that we all help to create. Simply stated, our company's purpose is to provide that shared success. We are focused on doing that with, as you can see here, in this very specific order. Our employees, our customers, our owners, we are employee owned, our partners, and then the larger community as well. Next slide, please, Chris. Oh, thank you. Sorry, delay on my end. As I mentioned, we are a team of consultants. This spans from sales to implementation. And because no one at Cargus makes a commission, not even our sales team, no one on my team, we're able to build strong, lasting relationships that are built on mutual trust. We are the type of technology partner who will give you honest advice. We will let you know if you should be doing something better. And we base that advice off of our decades of experience working in various industries, as I mentioned earlier. We do not outsource any of our work. So everything from implementations to support to ongoing customer care will be delivered by the Cargus team here in America, largely, not exclusively, but largely in Pennsylvania. And unlike some other software systems, that ask you to change your processes to fit the system's requirements, Cargus and Sage Intacct is completely configurable. So the way that you do business is something that we will configure the system to meet. And as I mentioned along the way, if we see an opportunity for you to be doing something more efficiently, we'll let you know. In addition to the ERP software, Cargus is a one-stop shop for integrating your systems and making everything work together better. We have a CRM practice that supports Salesforce, HubSpot, and Microsoft Dynamics CRM. We have an energy industry product that's the best in its class. And then we have a whole department of developers and engineers who custom build software, integrations, and Excel tools to help our customers work smarter, not harder. So the last thing for today is your last audience poll here to make sure that you get proper credit. What are your next steps? So let me launch this one. So where would you say that you fit? Are you fed up? You're ready to chat. You're ready, to talk about your options right now. Are you juggling lots of different priorities right now? Obviously we're in, for a lot of organizations here, it's Q4, getting into the holidays. Do you have other priorities right now? And maybe we should punt the ball for, a month or two or something like that. Or are you just beginning to research alternatives to QuickBooks and you're really in your early days? All right. So thank you everyone for your feedback with all of those polls. We did get some questions during this session. Chris, would you mind manning the questions?
Yep.
Thank you.
So one we kind of touched on, it was one of the earlier questions, but how many entities can you manage in Sage Intacct? And how long does it take to set up a new one? And as Linda kind of said when she showed the shared environment and at the top level and the ability to switch between entities and add entities. As far as an entity adding, you can add unlimited amount of entities, and to add an entity takes, literally 30 seconds as long as you have the information, the ID that you want, federal EIN, all that good stuff, address if it's going to be different than the main company, you're able to add that within a minute. So super easy.
Yep.
Another one was, what's the typical implementation timeline going from QuickBooks to Sage Intacct and going live in Sage Intacct? And I'll just take that one too, just coming from the implementation environment. 8 to 12 weeks is usually pretty standard, good guess. Depends on obviously on any kind of what your modules are, how much cleanup you're doing, how much you need to revamp sort of your internal controls and your processes, but a standard implementation will be anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks, sometimes on the shorter end, depending on involvement from your team, sometimes on the longer end, just depending on a bunch of different factors, turnover, whatever it may be. So
yeah, and I'll piggyback on that. We have one thing that we do offer is help getting your historical data out of QuickBooks. So you're more than welcome to do it yourself. If you're a whiz and you want to pull your historicals out and pop those into Intacct, you're more than welcome to, but we do have a team where we are well seasoned in helping you do that. So bringing over a couple years of historical data so you can power those comparative financials is something that is routine and we can absolutely help you with.
Any other questions?
All right, excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. If you have any questions afterwards today, oh, sorry, I did one more here that I missed. I apologize. Does Sage Intacct integrate with Salesforce? Yes, it does. So we have an out-of-the-box integration with Salesforce that we offer. It's called the Advanced CRM Connector, and that is something that lots of different businesses use. So yes, it does.
And I would just add to that, Laurel, that again, I've been here 13 years. That relationship was in play when I came. We are platinum with Salesforce, so it's a proven integration. This is not something brand new. We've been doing this for a long time, so lots of folks are taking advantage of that integration with Salesforce.
Yeah. So thank you for joining today's webinar. You will receive a short survey after the event ends today. Appreciate you filling that out and your feedback. So again, you will receive this recording shortly. Remember to download the slides as a handout if you want those, and have a great day.